Thanks a lot to Anna Teresa and also the whole Explore community for having me, for inviting me, and the opportunity to present my favorite topic, as you already mentioned, on the stage. My quick agenda will be, first I will introduce myself, then I will talk about why gamification is relevant. Then I will show you some approaches if you want to implement gamification with small steps. And in the end, I hope you have a better understanding of gamification and that you're capable of thinking through a gamification approach. So my name is Shobhit Arora, and as Anna Teresa already told you, I'm a gamification specialist at Gamify Now, and Gamify Now is a gamification agency of Europe's largest game developer network, which is called Remote Control Productions. And I'm working in this area since my bachelor degree when I wrote my thesis about behavioral economics. And I consider myself as a gamification enthusiast because I really believe in this approach and in the mindset of gamification. But let's start with one question. So we all have this basic idea that we work to spend money. What if I told you that there's an industry that makes people actually spend money to work? Well, there is one, and they are very successful. I assume you already have worked for them, and I'm talking about the gaming industry, where we actually pay to get really thought out tasks and challenges that we simply love to do. Gamers spend so much time and effort into solving problems, getting better at skill, and discovering new levels or new maps. And there's a very powerful force behind all this effort, behind this behavior, and this is actually intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation drives us whenever we do something without really expecting any kind of compensation or reward. Or in other words, whenever we work without getting money. Typically, we find intrinsic motivation when we have contexts like hobbies, sports, or games. So the important question now is, how can we benefit, or how can your company actually benefit from this gamification approach? Well, there are basically two main target groups that you can address when you apply gamification. That's at least from our experience. And these two target groups are the customers, so how to drive brand awareness or sales, or your employees. The idea is thinking about learning, thinking about compliance, how to make your employees better. And usually the typical inquiry we get is, how do I get more engagement? And this question, in other words, means, where do the activities, stories, or products of my company coincide with the interests, hobbies, or beliefs of my potential customers? So let's have a look at one case with one of our clients. And this client is Teva, which is a big pharmaceutical company and the mother company of the brand Ratio Farm. And Teva wanted to deliver extra value to their customers when the patent for one of their medical products ran out. The client actually were multiple sclerosis patients suffering from a neuronal disease that affected their capability to move and think. I guess the most of you have heard about MS. So the actual situation was that their own approach was a website called Active with MS, where the patients could get relevant info about the disease and also exchange with each other. And to make this even work better, they decided to bring us in order to deliver more value, resulting ultimately in more customer loyalty. So the main idea was to highlight the biggest coincidence of interest, which in this case were brain training games, like memory, attention, concentration, calculation, and so on. All these cognitive skills had to be maintained and practiced by the patient who suffer from multiple sclerosis, because, as I said, it is not only attacking your body but also your mind. And by simply applying this this new framework, this new dynamics within the website, we got a lot more website visits, a lot more interactions, and we developed brain games that actually had a very good algorithm in adjusting the difficulty, because gaming is all about getting into the flow, and getting into the flow is all about finding the right level of difficulty. And this was one important thing that we implemented. And you see some KPIs about what actually happened afterwards. And after having this kind of engagement, the patients were also even more engaged within the community. And now we know that there are many users who worked with this website on a daily basis for years now. And this is a big success. But the very important base thought behind it is to match motivations with the goals of the patients, because otherwise this whole gamification approach will not work out. And now I want to give you 3 approaches that can gamify a process or an experience without the necessity of involving a big software, like we did with this brain games. Or you don't need to have a big framework or a game engine to actually have a gamified experience. You can get a gamified experience with a way more subtle manner. And for this, I have 3 approaches. One of them, or the first of them, is actually feedback. It's all about implementing short-term or real-time feedback. And for this, I have one case for you about the company Sell & Pick. So the company Sell & Pick started by getting the data from the cash desk in restaurants. They saw that there is a big potential actually working in this real-time data in order to motivate the waiters. And apart from other data services for the management, they actually have an app that shows the waiters different stats about their selling, whatever they're selling, what kind of products they have, and how even how much steps they're doing. So there's a big variety of data. And one is, for example, that you get the badge of being a barista of the crew when you especially sell a lot of coffee to the guests. And another badge might be the Stage Pro badge for delivering the best performance whenever the restaurant is fully booked out. Additionally, you can set up team missions of selling X liter of wine, and then you see visualized how a bottle of wine is being emptied throughout the day whenever the team makes a wine sale. So I hope you understand that here a lot of feedback is given, and importantly, they didn't implement any kind of competition or leaderboards, because this could be a bad dynamic for the team. The most important thing from a gamification perspective is this idea of real-time feedback they give to the employees. And the interesting part is that they do not simply show you your sales numbers, like how much, in what time, what activity, but various other kinds of information too, like who took care of cleaning the ashtrays, who checked if everything was all right in the restrooms, or how is your sales of cakes compared to your sales of beer. So they're not only giving you real the typical numbers, but also a lot of other activities that you're doing, and they're feedbacking you how your activity actually looks like. And additionally, the employees do not know what kind of badges there are. So they just work, and at some point they see, okay, I get like, for example, this Stage Pro badge that I earlier mentioned. So this this aspect of surprise is also implemented within, and this is something that we also know from gaming experiences. So what now actually happens when you give all these different kinds of feedbacks is that our brains that are trained to find patterns start to play with these data points because it is triggered by this real-time feedback. And the main idea I want to give you is to provide any kind of relevant data that might trigger a playful interaction, as our minds will consciously or subconsciously start to process and act on that data. But there are two different things that you really need to have in mind, because these are like the standard traps whenever gamification is applied. And one is typical incentives. So gift cards or a new laptop whenever you reach a goal. This is a big trap because they can actually destroy this intrinsic motivation of your employees, because what we want to, when we think of employees, what we want for them is to actually harness their own attitude to deliver a good performance and their own wish to get better. This is what we talk about, and it's not about giving extra incentives, so like paying them just in a more fancy way. It is about really seeing, okay, what is it that they want, which coincides what we want. The other big trap are points. Whenever you have points in any system, you should make sure that those points are relevant, which means that they reflect some kind of progress at a skill. And importantly, they shouldn't be used as an extrinsic motivation in the sense of 1,000 points will grant you a 20 euro Amazon gift card. The second approach that I have is the mechanics of discovery. So here it is all about making tools and infos more discoverable. When we are children, we are insanely curious to find and experience new things by ourselves. But now, especially with the massive availability of information, we are rather overwhelmed and in a continuous attitude of filtering and protecting our minds from information overload. So, for example, in many games, tutorials start only when you stumble upon a special situation like an obstacle or when you want to use a certain tool. And this idea, which we already know from games, can be transferred to a service or a product that has various complicated aspects. You can make the user have a bite-sized units of learnings that happen surprisingly when they have a certain feature or a certain sub site that they're visiting. At this point, the user gets extra information, gets an extra learning unit, which rewards the curiosity of the user. And if your learning unit was actually powerful, the user will look for more to learn and find out. And here also there's one thing that you need to have in mind. And whenever you designing such a discovery context, you need to have in mind that it is not a step-by-step guide. Because earlier we already talked about that aspect of surprise. There has to be the feeling that we also have in every game environment that we are actually finding something by ourselves. So there has to be a feeling of autonomy and also a feeling of incalculability. I hope that's kind of the word. The last approach I have is the triple R approach, which means reframe rewards as resources. So the idea behind this approach is to especially restrict access to tools. So it's all about restricting access to tools, informations, or also decision rights, or any other things you can think of that can be restricted. And the access to these things will be granted only after showing intrinsically motivated behavior. So one example how this could be implemented is, or how this is also implemented is, for example, in the scenario of communities. So just imagine a forum associated to a health software service that has the ritual of choosing a topic of the month that every member of this forum may comment on, and this is like one big topic of the month. Now you can reward especially active members of the community by giving them the right to choose, for example, 1 out of 3 topics that will be suggested as the next topic of the month. And this way you actually rewarded them for being active, and now they can actually be more active. So this is kind of the clue behind this RRR approach. When we think more about the employee side, one simple application is the access to new software or new software features. So for example, you could upgrade the plan for the CRM software for your sales employees that have the highest activity on the current CRM program. By this, this was too early. By this, you reward them to have access to a software, while ultimately you pave the way for them to deliver an even better performance. So you, as in the scenario before, you're actually rewarding their own engagement to give them the capability of having even more engagement, to actually using the CRM tool even more, to have a better reporting, to have better features, to have a better performance in the end. Okay, so now I'm already at the end, and to wrap it up, gamification is an approach that concentrates on fostering and activating the intrinsic motivation of the target group. Therefore, to apply gamification, it's important to understand the intrinsic motivations of the target group, and based on that, to find where the motivations, as I said earlier, coincide with the service usage, with the learning management, with the learning playground, whatever context you have and whatever context you want to gamify. You always need to find this. You can also see it as a win-win situation where the motivations of the user coincide with the motivations of whatever your goal, your aim is. And I gave you 3 approaches. I will just quickly go through them again. Feedback. So try to deliver short-term feedback so that the brains of your users, customers, employees can start to process and play with that feedback. The other approach was discovery. So make information more discoverable, more explorable, so that also our curiosity is triggered. And the RRR framework, reframe resources as rewards. So try to grant access to, for example, tools after the users show intrinsic motivation, to reward this intrinsic motivation with even the possibility to be even more intrinsically motivated. Okay, with these approaches, you can definitely start with your own little implementations of gamification, and I hope that I was able to give you a little overview over how gamification actually works. And in the end, I want to wish you all a lot of success and obviously a lot of fun.